Welcome to the world's countries from boring travel and geography for sleep. This is the series where we slowly, quietly, and perhaps too thoroughly explore everything there is to know, or not really need to know, about every country in the world. One by one in a completely random order. And tonight, our journey brings us to Azerbaijan. Yes, Azerbaijan, a country that you may have heard of, but perhaps couldn't immediately point to on a map. That's okay. We'll take our time. There will be no fast-paced facts, no dramatic music, and absolutely no exciting stories. Just a long, slow, slightly tedious walk through the dry terrain of geography, facts, history, and a few curious details, all designed to help you fall gently asleep, or at the very least, to be very bored. And of course, as with all episodes in this series, there may be occasional small mistakes. We try our best, but geography is a big place. So if you happen to be from Azerbaijan, or have visited, or just know more than we do, feel free to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Unless it's to argue. Then maybe don't. So let's begin. Geographic location. Azerbaijan is located in the region often referred to as the South Caucasus, which is the area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It is technically considered part of Asia, although some might argue it's at the very edge of Europe. This is the kind of ambiguity that geographers love, and most other people ignore. The country lies along the western coast of the Caspian Sea. This is the world's largest inland body of water. Some call it a sea, others call it a lake. It is salty, but not quite salty enough to be called an ocean, and too big to be a simple lake. This, too, is something geographers have not fully agreed on. To the north, Azerbaijan shares a border with the Russian Federation. The area of Russia that it borders is not Moscow or St. Petersburg, but rather the Republic of Dagestan, which is in the North Caucasus. This border is fairly long and mountainous. To the northwest, Azerbaijan borders Georgia. Not the U.S. state, of course, but the small country that also lies between the Black and Caspian Seas. Further west, it touches Armenia, a country with which Azerbaijan has a complicated and often difficult relationship, particularly over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. That's something we'll get to later. But for now, we'll just say that the border with Armenia is not a particularly friendly one. To the south, Azerbaijan borders Iran. This border is quite long and lies along the Aras River in many places. There are deep cultural and historical connections between Azerbaijan and Iran, in part because a large number of ethnic Azerbaijanis live in northern Iran, on the other side of the border. There is also a small, separate part of Azerbaijan called Nakhchivan. This is an exclave, meaning it's a part of the country that isn't connected to the rest of it. Nakhchivan is bordered by Armenia, Iran, and Turkey. The border with Turkey is only about 10 kilometers long, making it the shortest of Azerbaijan's international borders. So to summarize, and don't worry, we'll do this slowly, Azerbaijan has 5 neighbors: Russia to the north, Georgia to the northwest, Armenia to the west, Iran to the south, and Turkey, but only barely, in the far southwest via the Nakhchivan exclave. And to the east, it faces the Caspian Sea, a sea that might be a lake, or a lake that might be a sea. There is no open access to the world's oceans from Azerbaijan. So while it does have a coastline, it's not a maritime power in the traditional sense. The Caspian Sea connects to no other seas. There are no tides, and no beaches with big waves. Just quiet, landlocked water. Geographically, Azerbaijan is quite diverse. But we'll get to that later. For now, you can imagine the country as a kind of triangle, sloping down from the Caucasus Mountains in the north, toward the Caspian Sea in the east, and gently dipping into the dry lowlands in the south. And that, for now, is where Azerbaijan is. Size, name, independence, and topography. Now that we know where Azerbaijan is, it's time to consider how big it is. Not very big, really, not by world standards. Azerbaijan covers an area of approximately 86,600 square kilometers. That puts it somewhere in the middle range globally. Not among the biggest countries, and not among the smallest. It's the 112th largest country in the world. That means there are over 100 countries that are larger and quite a few that are smaller. It is slightly smaller than Austria, slightly larger than the United Arab Emirates, a bit bigger than Portugal, but not as big as Hungary. This kind of comparison is rarely helpful, but we do it anyway. In terms of its shape, Azerbaijan is vaguely triangular, but not in a precise way. It stretches from the Greater Caucasus Mountains in the north, where the peaks are high and often snow-covered, down toward the lowlands and semi-desert plains near the Iranian border in the south. The full and official name of the country is the Republic of Azerbaijan. In Azerbaijani, the language of the country, it is called Azerbaycan Respublikasi. You can pronounce it however you like. We won't correct you. As for the origin of the name Azerbaijan, it's thought to come from an ancient Persian satrap named Atrapates, who ruled the region under Alexander the Great. His name, in Old Persian, meant something like protected by fire. This is fitting, because the area has long been known for its natural gas fires that burn from the ground, due to subterranean gas deposits. These fires were considered sacred by ancient Zoroastrians, who worshipped fire. So yes, in a way, Azerbaijan is the land of fire. But it's not as dramatic as that sounds. When it comes to independence, Azerbaijan's story is a little more complicated than most. The country declared its first short-lived independence in 1918, after the fall of the Russian Empire. That lasted only about 2 years. In 1920, Azerbaijan became part of the Soviet Union. It remained a Soviet republic for most of the 20th century. It wasn't until 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that Azerbaijan once again became an independent country. So, depending on how you count it, Azerbaijan is either quite young as a modern state, or very old, depending on how far back you want to go. The landscape of Azerbaijan is surprisingly varied for a country of its size. The highest point is Mount Bazarduzu, which rises to an elevation of 4,466 meters above sea level. That's about 14,652 feet. It's part of the Greater Caucasus Mountain Range, which runs along the northern edge of the country and forms the natural border with Russia. At the other end of the topographical scale, Azerbaijan also has one of the lowest natural points on Earth that isn't covered by water. The Caspian Sea sits at around 28 meters below sea level. Yes, below sea level. It is the lowest point in Azerbaijan, and in fact the lowest point in all of Europe and Asia. Depending on how you count the continents, of course. Between these highs and lows, the country includes everything from alpine meadows to arid plains, semi-deserts, wetlands, forests, and coastal lagoons. But don't worry, we'll get to all of that slowly later. For now, just know that Azerbaijan is a place of mountains and lowlands, rivers and reservoirs, and an unusual combination of geological activity, including mud volcanoes. Yes, mud volcanoes. They are not dangerous, just very muddy. Flag, language, population, and religion. Let us now turn our attention to the flag of Azerbaijan. A flag that, like most flags, is a rectangle. Its design is simple but colorful, consisting of 3 horizontal stripes. The top stripe is blue, the middle one is red, and the bottom one is green. In the center of the red stripe, there is a white crescent and an 8-pointed star. The blue represents the Turkic heritage of the Azerbaijani people. The red symbolizes progress and modernization, which are both abstract and subjective, but still popular concepts to put on a flag. The green stands for Islam, which is the dominant religion in the country. As for the crescent and the star, these are symbols often associated with Islam, though they predate it. The 8 points of the star are sometimes said to represent the 8 branches of the Turkic peoples. Or, depending on the source, the 8 letters in the word Azerbaijan when written in Arabic script. Interpretations vary. This current flag design was first adopted in 1918, during Azerbaijan's brief independence, and then brought back in 1991 after the country left the Soviet Union. During Soviet times, the flag was very different, mostly red, with some hammers and sickles. But those are gone now. When it comes to language, the official language of Azerbaijan is called Azerbaijani, or sometimes Azeri. It is a Turkic language, closely related to Turkish. In fact, Turkish and Azerbaijani speakers can often understand each other to a significant degree, though with a few misunderstandings here and there, as is common with related languages. Azerbaijani is written in the Latin alphabet, much like English. But this was not always the case. Over the last century, the script has changed several times, from Arabic to Latin, then to Cyrillic under Soviet rule, and back to Latin again after independence. This makes reading old signs or documents something of a historical puzzle. While Azerbaijani is the official and most widely spoken language, there are also minority languages spoken in parts of the country, including Lesgian, Talysh, Avar, and Russian. Russian in particular is still used in business and education, especially among older generations. As of the most recent estimates, Azerbaijan has a population of roughly 10 million people. That puts it somewhere in the mid-range globally, not overpopulated, but not sparsely populated either. It ranks around 90th in the world by population, which is the kind of number that is easily forgotten and rarely matters outside of trivia games. For comparison, Azerbaijan has about as many people as Sweden, or Portugal, or the U.S. state of Michigan. It's not a particularly youthful population, but not particularly old either. The population is growing slowly, but steadily. Azerbaijan is, demographically speaking, fairly homogeneous. The vast majority of people, more than 90%, identify as ethnic Azerbaijanis. Other groups include Lesgians, Russians, Talysh, Avars, and a few others. The demonym, meaning the word used to describe someone from Azerbaijan, is simply Azerbaijani. You can say an Azerbaijani person, or Azerbaijanis if you're talking about more than one. There is no widely accepted adjective like Azerbanish or Azerbaijanese. Just Azerbaijani. In terms of religion, most Azerbaijanis identify as Muslim, around 97%. But that number does not always reflect active religious practice. The country is officially secular, meaning there is no state religion, and religious life is often private and subdued. Most Muslims in Azerbaijan follow the Shia branch of Islam, making it one of the few countries where Shia Islam is the majority, along with Iran and a few others. There are also smaller Sunni Muslim communities, as well as followers of Christianity, Judaism, and other faiths. These are very small in number, but often have historical roots going back centuries. Religious tolerance is generally promoted by the state, though religious groups are also subject to regulation and control, which is something of a contradiction, but not unusual in modern states. So, in summary, Azerbaijan has a colorful flag with historical meaning, a Turkic language that has changed script more than once, about 10 million people, most of whom identify as Azerbaijani and Muslim, though not always devoutly so. And now you know that too. Currency, capital, government, and economy. Let us now move gently forward to the country's currency, its capital city, the form of government, and inevitably the economy. The currency of Azerbaijan is called the manat. The plural is also manat. Its ISO code is AZN, in case you're the kind of person who enjoys looking at currency codes. One Azerbaijani manat is usually worth about half a US dollar, give or take, depending on exchange rates, inflation, and global oil prices. The manat was reintroduced in its current form in 2006, replacing an older version that had too many zeros. This is something many post-Soviet countries experienced. Too many zeros, and then eventually a reset. There are coins called kpik, which are subdivisions of the manat. But unless you live there, you probably won't need to memorize them. The capital of Azerbaijan is the city of Baku, spelled Baku. It is located on the western coast of the Caspian Sea, which, as we mentioned earlier, may or may not be a sea. Baku is not just the capital. It is by far the largest city in the country. With a population of around 2.3 million people, depending on how you count the metropolitan area, it is home to roughly 1 in 5 Azerbaijanis. Baku is an old city. Very old. Some believe it dates back at least to the 6th century, possibly earlier. It has grown and changed many times. From a medieval town to an oil boom city under the Russian Empire, a Soviet industrial center, and now a city of glitzy towers and broad boulevards, sitting beside ancient mosques and narrow alleyways. The city is located below sea level, making it the lowest capital city in the world in terms of elevation. That is a fact you can remember if you want to impress absolutely no one. Beyond Baku, the next largest cities in Azerbaijan include Ganja, Sumqayit, and Mingachever. These are industrial or regional centers, but most international visitors, if there are any, usually stay in Baku. Azerbaijan is officially a republic with a presidential system. This means there is a president who holds significant executive power. The current president, as of this recording, is Ilham Aliyev. He has been president since 2003, succeeding his father, Haydar Aliyev, who served before him, both during and after the Soviet period. The Aliyev family has dominated Azerbaijani politics for several decades and shows no signs of stopping. Ilham Aliyev has been re-elected multiple times, often with extremely high percentages of the vote, so high that some outside observers have raised questions. Inside the country, however, there is a consistent message of stability and national strength. Whether or not you believe that depends on what sources you read and how sleepy you are. The government consists of executive, legislative, and judicial branches, at least in theory. The parliament is called the Milli Majlis, which means National Assembly. There are elections, laws, courts, and ministries, as one might expect in a modern state. But Azerbaijan is often described as authoritarian or semi-authoritarian in international rankings. Freedom House, for example, does not give it very high scores. Despite this, the country is a member of many international organizations. It is a member of the United Nations, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Non-Aligned Movement, and the Commonwealth of Independent States. It is not a member of the European Union nor NATO, but it does have various partnerships and observer roles here and there. Now let's move on to the economy. Azerbaijan's economy is largely driven by oil and gas. And by largely, we mean significantly. The country sits on rich deposits of petroleum, and offshore drilling in the Caspian Sea has been underway for decades. In fact, Baku was one of the first major oil-producing cities in the world, with oil wells dating back to the 19th century. The State Oil Fund of Azerbaijan, sometimes abbreviated SOFAZ, was established to manage the country's oil wealth. This is common in countries that depend on natural resources. It's meant to save for the future, or at least to try. Other sectors of the economy include agriculture, such as cotton, fruits, vegetables, and tea. There is also industry, construction, services, and more recently, tourism and information technology. But the economy still rises and falls with the price of crude oil. In terms of GDP, Azerbaijan ranks around 90th in the world, depending on whether you measure in nominal or purchasing power-adjusted terms. It is considered an upper-middle-income country by the World Bank. That means it's not poor, and not rich either. Somewhere in between. On the Human Development Index, Azerbaijan is ranked around 90th as well. Again, not at the top, not at the bottom. Somewhere in the middle. Life expectancy is around 72 years. Education is widespread. Healthcare exists, though it can vary in quality. So, overall, Azerbaijan is a middle-sized country with a middle-income economy, a fairly long-serving president, and a capital city located below sea level. And now you know all of that too. Life expectancy, HDI, and common Google questions. Let us now take a quiet look at how people in Azerbaijan live. Or rather, for how long they live and how those lives are measured. The average life expectancy in Azerbaijan is about 72 years. That's a global average, not among the highest and not among the lowest. It's similar to countries like Brazil or Indonesia. People in Azerbaijan tend to live into their 70s, on average, with women living a little longer than men. This is, of course, quite common around the world. Health services are available, especially in cities. In rural areas, access may be more limited, but many basic health indicators have improved in recent decades. Infant mortality has gone down. Vaccination rates have gone up. And while the healthcare system is not perfect, it is not non-existent either. Now let us look at a slightly more complex number, the Human Development Index, or HDI. This index combines three main things: life expectancy, education, and income. It is produced by the United Nations Development Program and places countries into four categories: very high, high, medium, and low human development. Azerbaijan is ranked as having high human development, just below the very high group. It usually falls somewhere around 88th to 92nd place, depending on the year and the source. It ranks higher than some of its regional neighbors, such as Armenia and Georgia, but lower than others, like Turkey. What keeps Azerbaijan from moving higher on the list is a combination of factors. While income per capita is relatively strong due to oil revenues and education is widespread, the country still faces challenges, particularly with corruption, freedom of the press, access to quality healthcare, and rural infrastructure. These are not unusual challenges in countries that have experienced rapid economic shifts without full institutional reform. Still, over time, the country has moved steadily upward on the list. Not quickly, but steadily. And now, before we move on to the long, slow story of Azerbaijan's history, let us consider something a little different: what people tend to Google about Azerbaijan. The most common searches about the country are quite predictable. Many people simply search for, "Where is Azerbaijan?" Which by now, you know. Others ask, "Is Azerbaijan in Europe or Asia?" And as we've said, it depends on who you ask. Some people ask, "Is it safe to visit Azerbaijan?" The answer is generally yes. But as with all countries, it depends where you go and what you do. Other frequent searches include, what language do they speak in Azerbaijan? What religion is most common? Why is there a conflict with Armenia? Do you need a visa for Azerbaijan? And what is the capital of Azerbaijan? If you've made it this far into the episode, you now know the answers to all of these. People also sometimes search for Azerbaijan Eurovision winners. Because yes, Azerbaijan has participated in the Eurovision Song Contest and even won it once, in 2011. Some more unusual searches include, is Azerbaijan rich? Is Baku sinking? Do they have snow in Azerbaijan? And why is Azerbaijan called the Land of Fire? We have already answered some of these questions. The others we may answer later. Or not. Sometimes a little mystery is okay. And now that we've completed our long, slow journey through the facts of Azerbaijan, from its borders and mountains, to its flag and currency, to its population and its oil, we can quietly move on to something else. Its history. But first, maybe a deep breath. And maybe a yawn. A sleepy walk through history. The story of Azerbaijan stretches far back in time. Much farther than most people realize. People have lived in this region for thousands of years, long before the name Azerbaijan ever existed. Archaeological evidence shows that human settlements in the territory of modern-day Azerbaijan date back to the Stone Age. Caves, tools, and ancient hearths have been discovered in places like the Azak Cave, which is one of the oldest known human habitations in the entire region. The land that is now Azerbaijan has always been a kind of crossroads, where the mountains of the Caucasus meet the lowlands, and where cultures from the east and west, north and south have passed through, settled, traded, and sometimes fought. In ancient times, this region was part of various empires and kingdoms. The Medes controlled it in the 7th century BCE. Later, it came under the Achaemenid Persian Empire, ruled from far away in what is now Iran. During this period, Zoroastrianism was the dominant religion, a faith that involved the worship of fire and the struggle between light and darkness. This might help explain why the region is still known as the Land of Fire. Then came Alexander the Great, whose armies swept through the region in the 4th century BCE. After his death, his empire split, and the area fell under various Hellenistic rulers. One of them was a satrap named Atrapates. His name, as we mentioned earlier, is believed to be the root of the word Azerbaijan. The area he governed was called Atropatene, and over time, this name evolved through many forms, eventually becoming Azerbaijan. In the centuries that followed, the region saw many rulers. The Parthians, the Romans, the Sassanid Persians. By the 7th century CE, something new arrived: Islam. Arab armies conquered the area, and gradually, the local population converted to Islam, mostly to the Shia branch, which would later become significant in shaping the country's identity. During the medieval period, Azerbaijan was ruled by a long list of dynasties and empires. There was the Shaddadid dynasty and the Sajid dynasty. Later came the Seljuks, who were Turkic in origin. They brought with them a new wave of language and culture that would eventually blend with the local population, leading to the emergence of the Azerbaijani language as we know it today. Then came the Mongols under Genghis Khan, whose armies swept through the region in the 13th century. After the initial destruction, which was considerable, the region became part of the Ilkhanate, one of the Mongol successor states. This was followed by the Timurid Empire, and then by a series of local khanates and Turkic tribal confederations. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Azerbaijan was caught between two larger powers, the Safavid Empire of Persia and the Ottoman Empire to the west. These two empires fought over the Caucasus region repeatedly, and Azerbaijan changed hands several times. Borders shifted. Cities were burned. Treaties were signed, then broken. This went on for centuries. During this time, the city of Tabriz, now in modern-day Iran, was often a cultural and political center for Turkic-speaking Shia Muslims, including many ancestors of present-day Azerbaijanis. But Tabriz is no longer part of Azerbaijan. It lies just across the border, in Iranian Azerbaijan, a region with a name that adds further confusion for anyone trying to make sense of the map. By the 18th century, the area we now call Azerbaijan was divided into independent khanates, small regional kingdoms or principalities, each ruled by a khan. These included the Baku Khanate, the Karabakh Khanate, and several others. They were semi-autonomous, sometimes loyal to Persia, sometimes not, and sometimes at war with each other. And then came the Russians. By the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th, the Russian Empire had begun expanding southward. The khanates of what is now Azerbaijan were gradually drawn into the orbit of Imperial Russia, sometimes through diplomacy, sometimes through war. The Russian Empire was not particularly subtle about its intentions. It wanted territory, ports on the Caspian, and access to the greater Middle East. A series of conflicts between Russia and Persia, known as the Russo-Persian Wars, led to the signing of two important treaties: the Treaty of Gulistan in 1813 and the Treaty of Turkmenchay in 1828. These treaties handed over large parts of the South Caucasus to Russia. What had once been Persian territory was now Russian. The khanates were abolished, and Azerbaijan became part of the Russian Empire. Russian rule brought roads, railways, and some modernization, but also control, censorship, and exploitation. The oil fields of Baku began to be developed in the late 19th century. By the early 20th century, Baku had become one of the most important oil-producing cities in the world. Workers from across the Russian Empire came to labor in the fields, and many foreign companies, including the Nobel brothers and the Rothschilds, invested in Azerbaijani oil. At the same time, political unrest was growing. The early 20th century was a time of strikes, protests, ethnic violence, and revolution across the Russian Empire. Baku was no exception. Armenians, Azerbaijanis, Russians, and others clashed violently at times, particularly in 1905, when pogroms and reprisals shook the region. Then came World War I, and after that, the Russian Revolution in 1917. The collapse of the Tsarist regime opened a window of opportunity, and for a brief moment in 1918, Azerbaijan declared independence, becoming the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic. It was the first secular democratic republic in the Muslim world, which is a fact Azerbaijanis are justifiably proud of. This first republic had a short but ambitious life. It established a parliament, gave women the right to vote, and tried to assert sovereignty over its territory, including the ethnically mixed and politically contested region of Nagorno-Karabakh. But by 1920, the Red Army had arrived. The Bolsheviks invaded, and Azerbaijan was incorporated into the Soviet Union, becoming the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic. Under Soviet rule, Azerbaijan was transformed. The oil industry was nationalized. Roads, power plants, and schools were built. Education became widespread. So did state propaganda, censorship, and political repression. During Stalin's purges in the 1930s, thousands of Azerbaijanis, including intellectuals and politicians, were imprisoned or executed. During World War II, Azerbaijani oil played a crucial role in fueling the Soviet war machine. Baku was a strategic target for Nazi Germany, but the German army never reached it. After the war, Soviet Azerbaijan continued to industrialize, and Baku became a center for science, culture, and heavy industry. But the Soviet system had cracks. Economic stagnation, ethnic tensions, and a lack of political freedom all simmered under the surface. In the late 1980s, as Mikhail Gorbachev introduced reforms like glasnost and perestroika, long-suppressed issues began to re-emerge. One of the most explosive was the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, a mountainous region within Azerbaijan, but populated mostly by ethnic Armenians. In 1988, the regional authorities of Nagorno-Karabakh voted to join Armenia. Azerbaijan rejected this. Tensions rose quickly. Riots broke out. Pogroms took place. And by 1990, Soviet troops were sent to Baku to restore order, killing over 100 civilians in an event known as Black January. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Azerbaijan, like the other Soviet republics, declared independence. But independence came at a cost. The war over Nagorno-Karabakh turned into a full-scale armed conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. By 1994, Armenia had gained control not only of Nagorno-Karabakh, but also several surrounding Azerbaijani districts. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced, mostly Azerbaijanis. A fragile ceasefire was signed, but the conflict remained unresolved for decades. In the meantime, Azerbaijan tried to rebuild. Its first years of independence were marked by political instability, economic collapse, and war. In 1993, Haydar Aliyev, a former KGB general and Communist Party leader, took power. He stabilized the country, negotiated oil contracts, and established firm control. When Haydar Aliyev stepped down in 2003, his son Ilham Aliyev became president, a position he continues to hold. Under his leadership, Azerbaijan has experienced economic growth, largely due to energy exports. At the same time, political freedoms remain limited, and corruption continues to be a significant issue. In 2020, after decades of frozen conflict, fighting broke out again in Nagorno-Karabakh. This time, Azerbaijan regained much of the territory it had lost in the 1990s. A Russia-brokered ceasefire ended the war after 6 weeks. The situation remains tense, and peace remains fragile. And so, the modern history of Azerbaijan is one of conquest, colonization, brief independence, Soviet control, post-Soviet instability, and now, cautious nationalism, economic development, and ongoing regional tension. And that is where we leave the history. Not with a conclusion, but with a pause. What it's like today. Today, Azerbaijan is a country of contrast. Mountains and sea. Deserts and forests. Oil rigs and shepherds. Glass towers and mud volcanoes. And although it may not be the first country that comes to mind when you think about modern travel or global affairs, it is a place that contains much more than meets the eye, slowly, quietly, and without fanfare. Let us begin with the landscape. As you might recall from earlier, Azerbaijan stretches from the Caucasus Mountains in the north to the lowlands along the Caspian Sea in the east. In the far south, near the border with Iran, there are more mountains, the Talysh Mountains. In between these ranges lies the Caucasus lowland, a wide, flat plain that covers much of the interior of the country. This geographical variation means that the country also has a wide range of climates. In the mountains, winters are cold and snowy. In the lowlands, summers can be extremely hot and dry. The Caspian coast has a milder climate, with humid summers and mild winters. The semi-desert regions can go weeks without rain. In contrast, the southern Lankaran region, near the Talysh foothills, is lush and subtropical. It even has tea plantations and rice paddies. There are 9 distinct climate zones in Azerbaijan. For such a small country, that is quite a lot. And it means that within a single day, you could theoretically go skiing in the morning and sit under palm trees in the afternoon. Though whether you'd want to is another matter entirely. Another unique feature of Azerbaijan's geography is its mud volcanoes. The country has more than half of the world's known mud volcanoes, more than 300. These are geological formations where mud, gas, and sometimes flames bubble up from the earth. They are not dangerous. They are slow, oozy, and mostly harmless. But they are curious to look at. Azerbaijan even sent a picture of one into space, a satellite image of a mud volcano on a stamp, aboard a space mission. In addition to natural beauty, Azerbaijan is rich in natural resources, especially oil and gas. The oil fields of the Caspian Sea continue to be the mainstay of the national economy. Pipelines run westward to Georgia and Turkey, supplying energy to European markets. One of the most important is the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, which allows oil to bypass Russia. But not everyone in Azerbaijan works in oil. Outside the capital, many people still rely on agriculture. In the flat, fertile plains, farmers grow wheat, cotton, fruits, grapes, and vegetables. In the more humid southern areas, there are tea plantations and citrus orchards. In the mountains, people raise sheep, cattle, and goats. Beekeeping is also common. In the cities, especially Baku, there is a growing service sector, with banks, restaurants, shopping malls, and IT companies. Tourism is also expanding, though slowly. And construction continues at a steady pace, with new towers, roads, and bridges appearing year after year. Unemployment exists, especially among the young. But overall, Azerbaijan's economy has grown since the chaos of the 1990s. Poverty has declined. Rural areas still face challenges, but infrastructure has improved. There are roads now, even in places where there were none before. Of course, as in many countries, life in the capital is very different from life in the countryside. And that's where we'll go next. If you were to walk slowly through Azerbaijan, and we recommend walking slowly, you would notice a gentle division between urban and rural life. This is not unique to Azerbaijan, but it is noticeable. In Baku, the capital city, life is fast by Azerbaijani standards. People commute, shop, work in offices, and go to cafes. There are traffic jams. There are advertisements. There are glass buildings and shopping malls. There is even a small metro system, opened in the 1960s, with stations built in the ornate Soviet style. Some of them still have chandeliers. Baku's waterfront has been modernized. The flame towers, 3 large curved glass skyscrapers, light up at night to resemble flickering fire, a modern nod to the country's ancient fire-worshipping past. There are museums, concert halls, and even a Formula One racetrack that winds through the city streets. But just outside Baku, the atmosphere changes. You pass small towns where ladas and donkeys sometimes share the road. Children wave from dusty courtyards. You see homes with grapevines growing over wooden gates. Chickens. Satellite dishes. Old tractors. Tea glasses on small tables. In the mountain villages, life is slower still. People grow their own food, tend to animals, and rely on seasonal rhythms. Snow in winter, planting in spring, harvest in summer. In some places, the postman still arrives on foot. Electricity and internet reach most places now, but not always reliably. The rural regions are not all the same. In the north, villages may have more connection to the Caucasian highland traditions. In the south, near Iran, you might hear the Talysh language spoken. In the west, closer to Armenia and the contested areas, the mood may be quieter, more reserved. Culturally, Azerbaijan is a blend of Turkic, Persian, Russian, and local Caucasian influences. Music is often accompanied by long-necked lutes, called tar, and played in complex improvisations known as mugham. This music can be both haunting and hypnotic, but also quite long, which seems fitting. Traditional clothing is usually only worn for festivals. In everyday life, people dress much like they do elsewhere: jeans, shirts, sneakers, and headscarves, depending on region and custom. Islam is present, but not especially visible. Azerbaijan is often described as a secular Muslim country, and most people seem to prefer it that way. Hospitality is important. Guests are offered tea, sweets, fruit, nuts, and sometimes more food than they can politely eat. Tea is almost always served in armuda glasses, pear-shaped and narrow in the middle. There may be lemon slices. There may be sugar cubes. There may be long silences, which are not considered uncomfortable. Education is free and mandatory for children. Literacy rates are high. Many students learn English or Russian in addition to Azerbaijani. University education exists, and the country has sent students abroad on scholarships. But the best opportunities are still found in the cities. Healthcare is available, though quality can vary. In Baku, private clinics offer more services than rural hospitals. In smaller towns, people may still rely on home remedies and advice from elders. In terms of daily life, people in Azerbaijan go to work, go to school, raise children, take buses, shop for groceries, visit relatives, watch football, and complain about prices. In this sense, they are much like people everywhere else. And now that you know what it's like to live in Azerbaijan, whether in a high-rise in Baku or a hillside village with goats, we can move on to something slightly more practical. Travel. How to travel there. Traveling to Azerbaijan is, in most respects, quite possible. Not always convenient. Not always cheap. But possible. Let us begin with the most basic question people often ask. Is it safe to travel to Azerbaijan? The answer, in general, is yes. Azerbaijan is considered safe for tourists. Violent crime is rare. Pickpocketing can happen, as it does in many places, but it is not common. Most visits go without incident. Police are visible, especially in Baku, and the government is quite keen to maintain order, especially in areas frequented by visitors. However, there are areas that you should not go to. The border with Armenia is closed, and the relationship between the two countries remains tense. Entering or photographing military areas, checkpoints, or disputed regions like Nagorno-Karabakh without permission can lead to serious consequences, including fines or arrest. So, as in many places, it is best to stick to open roads and marked paths. Now, the price level. Azerbaijan is not an expensive country, but it is not the cheapest either. Prices in Baku are higher than in the countryside. A budget-conscious traveler could get by on $30 to $50 per day. A mid-range visitor might spend double that. High-end hotels, restaurants, and imported goods, of course, cost more. Public transportation is affordable. A ride on the Baku metro costs very little, less than $1. Taxis are cheap, especially if you agree on a price in advance or use a ride-hailing app. Intercity travel by bus or train is slow, but inexpensive. If you are coming from Europe, the most common way to reach Azerbaijan is by airplane. The Heydar Aliyev International Airport in Baku is the main international gateway. Direct flights connect Baku to cities like Istanbul, Frankfurt, Moscow, Doha, Dubai, and others. There are fewer direct flights from North America, so travelers from that region typically connect through Europe or the Gulf. There is also a train from Tbilisi, in neighboring Georgia, to Baku. It is slow. It is not luxurious. But it exists. Some travelers say the experience is memorable. Others say it is better to fly. A new railway has also opened linking Baku to Kars, in eastern Turkey, via Georgia. It is mainly for freight, but may someday be more accessible for passengers. Ferry services across the Caspian Sea to Kazakhstan or Turkmenistan do exist, but are irregular and mostly used for cargo. Now about visas. Citizens of many countries, including those in the European Union, the UK, and Canada, can apply for an e-visa online. It's relatively simple. It usually takes just a few days and costs around $20 to $25. The visa is valid for 30 days. Some nationalities do not need a visa at all. Others must apply through an embassy. As always, it is best to check before you travel. Once you arrive, immigration is generally smooth. But don't lose your registration slip if you stay more than 10 days. Hotels usually handle this, but if you're staying in private accommodation, you may have to do it yourself. And with all that in mind, safety, price, transportation, and entry requirements, we can now turn to the more pleasant side of travel. Where to go? Now that you've arrived in Azerbaijan legally and safely, the next quiet question is, where should you go? The obvious answer is Baku. The capital is home to most of the country's hotels, restaurants, museums, and services. Its old town, called Ikirishir, or the Inner City, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here, you can wander through narrow alleys of limestone buildings, past small mosques, quiet courtyards, and the Maiden Tower, a large, round, mysterious structure of unknown original purpose. Some say it was a fortress. Others say it was a fire temple. No one knows for sure, which makes it more interesting in a way. Also within Baku's old city is the Palace of the Shirvanshahs, a 15th-century royal complex complete with tombs, baths, and stone carvings. The old city is walled, walkable, and best explored slowly. Outside the walls, modern Baku stretches wide. The flame towers, as mentioned earlier, dominate the skyline. At night, they glow with animated lights, sometimes showing fire, sometimes the Azerbaijani flag. It is a curious combination of tradition and technology. The Baku Boulevard along the Caspian Sea offers a long, flat promenade, perfect for slow evening walks. There is even a mini Venice, with gondolas that float through artificial canals. It is not necessary, but it is there. Other sites include the Haydar Aliyev Center, designed by the late Iraqi-British architect Zaha Hadid. The building has no sharp corners. It curves and swoops like a frozen wave of white concrete. It is modern, photogenic, and slightly surreal. If you leave Baku, and you should, there is much else to see. To the west, the city of Sheki sits near the mountains, surrounded by forests and hills. It is known for its caravanserais, old inns that once hosted traders on the Silk Road. And the Sheki Khan's palace, built in the 18th century, features colorful stained glass windows set in intricate wooden lattices, all assembled without glue or nails. Further south, the Lankaran region is humid, green, and subtropical. Here you can find tea plantations, citrus trees, and even rice fields. The food is spicier. The accents are softer. In the north, the town of Kuba is known for apple orchards and mountain views. Nearby lies Krasnaya Sloboda, one of the world's only all-Jewish towns outside Israel, a historical curiosity that still exists today. The Gabustan National Park, not far from Baku, is home to prehistoric rock carvings, petroglyphs that depict ancient dances, boats, animals, and hunting scenes. The site is tens of thousands of years old. Nearby, you can see mud volcanoes, bubbling gray cones that gurgle softly, like nature trying to boil soup but never quite succeeding. And now food. Azerbaijani cuisine is warm, oily, hearty, and meant to be shared. Plov or pilaf is the national dish, made with rice, saffron, lamb, and dried fruits. It is not stirred. It is assembled. Dolma, or stuffed grape leaves, is common, filled with minced meat and herbs. So is kebab, of course, grilled over hot coals. Dushbara is a soup with tiny dumplings, served with vinegar. Pidi is a lamb stew cooked in a clay pot. Kutab is a thin, half-moon bread stuffed with greens or meat. Black tea is served with everything. And sugar cubes. And perhaps jam. Sometimes people dip sugar cubes in the tea, then bite them. There is no rush. Alcohol is available. Azerbaijan makes wine, brandy, and beer. But public drinking is rare, especially outside tourist areas. It is a secular country, but with polite manners. And now the weather. When to go depends on what you want. Spring, from April to June, is green, warm, and comfortable. Summer, especially in July and August, can be very hot, particularly in the lowlands and Baku, often exceeding 35 degrees Celsius. Autumn is mild, especially September and October, with harvest festivals and golden landscapes. Winter brings snow to the mountains, but Baku remains mostly damp and chilly rather than cold. So the best time to visit is usually May or September. Not too hot, not too cold, and fewer crowds, though Azerbaijan is never particularly crowded. And that is how to visit Azerbaijan. Quietly, slowly, and ideally with an appetite. Fun facts and famous faces. We now come to the portion of our journey where things get mildly unusual. These are the facts you don't really need to know, but may find yourself repeating at a dinner party someday. Quietly, with little enthusiasm. Let us begin with something elemental. Azerbaijan has more mud volcanoes than any other country in the world. Over 300 of them, in fact. These are not real volcanoes in the fiery, lava-slinging sense. They are gentle, bubbling mounds of gray, wet earth. Sometimes they belch methane. Sometimes they erupt and splatter the landscape with cool, sticky mud. They look a bit like boiling oatmeal that has been left alone for too long. But they are surprisingly photogenic. In 2001, one of Azerbaijan's mud volcanoes caught fire due to gas buildup and sent flames shooting 15 meters into the air. This is rare, but not unheard of. It added a dramatic twist to the country's long-standing title as the Land of Fire. Which brings us to natural gas fires, also quite common. At a site near Baku called Yanar Dag, meaning burning mountain, a flame has been burning continuously for decades, maybe even centuries, thanks to natural gas seeping through porous ground. You can visit it, sit near it, and feel the warmth of the Earth's quiet combustion. There is no off switch. Now, some historical trivia. The first oil well in the world was drilled in Baku in 1846. That's right, before the famous wells of Pennsylvania. Baku was already producing oil when John D. Rockefeller was still in short pants. By the early 20th century, Baku supplied over half the world's oil. The city was filthy, wealthy, crowded, and full of workers, poets, spies, and smoke. Let's talk now briefly about Eurovision. In 2011, Azerbaijan won the Eurovision Song Contest with the song Running Scared, performed by Elle and Nicki. The following year, the country hosted the competition in a newly built arena on the Caspian shore. It was a moment of great national pride, widely televised and carefully choreographed. The winning song itself has since faded from memory. And now people. Some of the most famous Azerbaijanis include Haydar Aliyev, former president, former KGB general, and national icon. His name is on streets, museums, airports, and schools. There is even a Haydar Aliyev Center that looks like a sculpture. Ilham Aliyev, current president, son of Haydar, and in many ways, continuing the legacy of strong centralized leadership. Mstislav Rostropovich, world-renowned cellist and conductor, born in Baku in 1927. Though he lived much of his life abroad, he is claimed proudly by the nation. Garry Kasparov, the former world chess champion, was born in Baku. Though he is ethnically Armenian Jewish and now lives in exile, his birthplace remains a point of minor geographical pride. Lala Mustafa Pasha, an Ottoman general of Azerbaijani origin, who led the siege of Famagusta in Cyprus in the 16th century. Not a household name, but a historical figure nonetheless. As for inventions, there are no blockbuster inventions that clearly originate from Azerbaijan. But the country does claim contributions to early oil drilling, mud volcano research, and musical instruments like the tar, which has been included in UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. And now, perhaps you're wondering about sports. That will come next. Sport in Azerbaijan is quietly important. The most popular sport to watch is probably football or soccer, though the national team has never qualified for a major international tournament like the World Cup or the European Championship. Still, domestic clubs like Karabag FK have made appearances in European competitions, and matches draw loyal crowds. Football is played in schoolyards, village fields, and stadiums. It is followed with hope and frustration, as in most countries. But Azerbaijan's biggest sporting success has come not in team sports, but in combat sports. The country has produced world-class athletes in wrestling, judo, boxing, and taekwondo. At the Olympic Games, Azerbaijan consistently wins medals, often in these disciplines. In fact, at the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio, Azerbaijan won 18 medals, including 1 gold, finishing higher on the medal table than many larger countries. That's quite a result, even if it didn't make international headlines. Azerbaijani athletes also compete in weightlifting, gymnastics, and karate, often with strong regional results. The government invests heavily in sports, building arenas, funding programs, and hosting events. In 2015, Baku hosted the first European Games, a large-scale, multi-sport event involving over 50 countries. The city has also hosted Formula One races since 2016, on a street circuit that winds through the old and new parts of the city. The Baku city circuit includes tight corners and a long straight by the sea. It is fast and loud. For many Azerbaijanis, sport is a source of national pride, a way to stand tall on the global stage, even if just for a brief medal ceremony. Now let us end. A quiet recap. And so, we've reached the end of our journey through Azerbaijan, a country of oil and fire, of tea and dumplings, of mountains and semi-deserts, of long-lasting leaders and quiet hospitality. We have walked slowly through its geography, its borders, its flag, and its mud volcanoes. We have listened to the echoes of empire, revolution, and war. We have sat beside the Caspian, watched dumplings boil in clay pots, and listened to the soft hum of the tar in a dark tea house. We've seen cities below sea level and flames that burn from the ground. We've remembered Eurovision, and maybe forgotten it again. If this helped you fall asleep, we're happy. If you're still awake, we thank you for your patience. There are many more countries to come in this series, slowly, alphabetically, and with as little excitement as possible. If you'd like more of this sort of thing, you're gently invited to subscribe or leave a like. Or not. It's really up to you. This has been The World's Countries by Boring Travel and Geography for Sleep. Tonight's country was Azerbaijan. And now perhaps it's time to rest. Good night.